Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and boy, oh boy, has comic book fans, comic book movie fans, superhero fans lost their collective minds over this past weekend after the release of DC Studios' Supergirl, a film that I don't know. I don't think that movie stood a chance as far as box office was concerned, but the critic response to it was, "Oh my God! You if you were a layman or just a casual film lover, go to the movies every now and then, only go to the movies to see a film that is a big blockbuster film because you don't have money to just spend on any old movie. Okay, I'm gonna wait for a big superhero type movie. Oh, Supergirl. Okay, I'll go see that. If you were waiting on the reviews to go see it, you probably would have stayed at home. Most likely you would have stayed at home because everybody hated that movie, critic wise, and some of the audience. Well, most of the audience. Let's be fair. The movie opened up to, I think, 37 million domestically, which is well below expectations. The expectations were already set low. I think they were expecting 45-ish, maybe close to 50 opening weekend, which is well below what they really wanted, but they shot low in hopes to hitting that mark so they can kind of celebrate, they being DC Studios and Warner Brothers, and it fell well below that mark. And so it is a big, big bomb domestically, and it wasn't helped by the critics and by the audience response. I saw the film, did a review. If you haven't heard my review and heard my thoughts and feelings about the film, it's up on all of my platforms. But just to give you a little Cliff Notes version of it, I actually enjoyed the film. I didn't think it was that bad. Now, I had fully addressed the movie had issues. The movie had problems, and it wasn't a perfect movie by no stretch. There aren't any perfect movies. Maybe 3 in the history of all films that you can really sit back and say that was perfect. That was a perfect film, from the acting, directing, the writing, the score, the cinematography. Everything was perfect. You don't catch movies like that. So that's not what I was expecting. But in my review, I stated that my expectations were pretty low going into Supergirl because that's not a character that I truly followed in the comics, that I would consider one of my favorites. I respect the character, like the character, like the character on the CW when Melissa Benoist, I think her name is, portrayed her. Thought that was great. I'm a kid of the 80s, so the 84 film with Helen Slater, I watched that. Fully acknowledged that it was terrible back in 84 and it's a terrible movie now. But, it was what it was. I'm not a big Supergirl fan, but I was excited to see this version of it. And for the most part, I was entertained. I went to the movie to be entertained. I was entertained. So I was happy. I wasn't looking for Shakespeare, It was what it was. But my God, is this movie being torched? I saw one review that said it was the worst comic book movie ever made. And all I could think about when I saw that was like, you must didn't watch Morbius. There's no way you watched Madam Web. There's no possible way you watched Batman and Robin and felt that this movie was worse than that. No, it's no way. This movie was all right. To be honest with you, in comparisons to the Superman film that we received last year, it's up there with that. And I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, but just like this movie, I enjoyed it for what it was. I wasn't looking for anything spectacular or trying to reinvent the wheel in superhero movies fashion. I just wanted to be entertained. I just wanted to see a good Superman movie, and I got it. And the same here. But I went to thinking, and I saw a lot of people questioning what's going on at DC Studios. Well, is there a problem there? Well, there is one. There is one. And I said, look, I'm going to join in on the fun. I'm going to give my opinion on what's going on at DC Studios and why it appears that it's not even, it's not, I would say crashing and burning, but we haven't really lifted off yet. You know, this is only the second film in this new quote unquote reboot of the DC universe, you know, with Peter Safran and James Gunn taking over as the heads of DC Studios. This is only their second go at it as far as a theatrical release. Now, we got other properties within the DCU. You know, you got Creature Commandos. You had Peacemaker Season 2. You got to realize that when Peter Safran and James Gunn took over, they pretty much inherited a mess, just a dumpster fire. You know, we were coming off the heels of Black Adam, which was what it was. You know, Henry Cavill, quote unquote, returning as Superman in that movie and announcing to the world that he's back, and just to be told a couple of days later that no, no, you're not. It was soul crushing. I felt so bad for Henry Cavill that he didn't get his real true Superman movie. You know, Man of Steel was. Look, I will fight to the death and argue that Man of Steel is one of the best comic book movies ever made. I loved Man of Steel. But as far as a traditional Superman movie, no, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't him coming into his own, him actually being Superman. You know, he was starting off. You know, he was a young pup in the game. And so you didn't really get that. And also you have the Batman problem, which is probably the biggest property that DC has. That is the most popular character. And I'm not just saying that because that's my all-time favorite comic book character ever. You know, I'm saying it because it's true. You know, look at the box office numbers of Batman movies. Going all the way back to Michael Keaton in 1989. Batman films has literally saved DC because no other DC property has been as successful as a Batman film, a standalone Batman film. Even when you put Batman in a film with others, it doesn't do as good as a Batman film by itself. Isn't that crazy? Justice League was trash. Batman v Superman, I'm not going to say it was trash, but it wasn't what we all expected or was hoping it to be. And so when James Gunn took over, you already have Matt Reeves with his Batman. He already has the Batman with Robert Pattinson, and that was well received by critics and fans alike. It was great. That was a great film. And so you got James Gunn wanting to create his own universe, but you have this other film here, and you can't create a DCU without your Batman. Yes, you need your Superman. You really need your Holy Trinity. You need Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman to kick off this universe. Marvel was the outlier. Marvel, what they did was unique and probably would never be done again. And James Gunn, in a lot of ways, was trying to do the same thing. Meaning, when you had Marvel started off with Iron Man back in 2008. Marvel used characters because they had no other choice at the time, but they used characters that were lesser known. No, not too many people knew about Iron Man. Not too many people knew about Thor. Not too many people followed Captain America like that. You know, that wasn't their core, in Marvel Comics. It was the X-Men, it was Spider-Man, it was the Avengers, but they were all together. And so it wasn't your main core there, but Marvel Studios had to do that because they didn't have the rights to all of their characters. They had to work with what they had. So what they gave us were these B level. They were B level. They're not now because of their popularity, but they were B level characters in the comics and focused on story, focused on building a lore around these characters that the audience can get behind, and it built up till we got to the Avengers, and after that it was shooting for the moon. Now you can introduce a Guardians of the Galaxy, you can introduce a Captain Marvel, you can introduce all of these other characters as well and throw them in the mix, and eventually they got their rights back to a lot of their characters. That's when you got Spider-Man. That's when Black Panther came into the fold. That's when you got the Fantastic Four and the X-Men that's coming soon for them. Now you're anticipating it. Now, Marvel, just to be fair, Marvel is in just as much trouble as DC Studios are right now. But a lot of that, just to deviate a little bit, a lot of that, and this applies to Marvel and DC, is because of fatigue. A while back, I did a show talking about fatigue because that was a thing. I think it was maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, that people are starting to get tired of comic book movies. And I didn't think that was the case then. But I can say that right now, I'm feeling like that's probably the case. I think that a lot of people are being just oversaturated with comic book characters in superhero movies and TV shows. And I think that TV is the culprit here. I think these streaming services are killing this genre because now you're getting so much. We're getting Spider Noir on cable. We're getting Secret Invasion and WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all of these other shows on Disney Plus, and that's connected, Ironheart and all this other stuff. All this stuff, it's just a lot, and all of it is connected. So you're asking the audience to do homework, and that's something we don't want to do. We don't want to do. We just want to sit back and watch a movie and enjoy that movie for what it is. It's fine that it's connected, but we don't have to have all of these other things that we have to watch and pay attention to and see the references to. For example, and I'm going to get back to DC. I know we're talking DC, but I'm trying to set up something here. Just look at the Marvels, that movie. Now, the movie wasn't good, but one of the reasons it was unsuccessful at the box office is because you had characters, your two of the three main characters were introduced on Disney Plus, and nobody knew who they were. Not everybody watched the Disney Plus show. Not everybody watched Miss Marvel. Not everybody watched WandaVision. So you didn't get the introduction of these characters, who they are, how they fit in this universe, and the movie crashed and burned. Now, I watched all those shows and watched the Marvels, and I still felt it was bad. So that's not the issue, but that's part of the problem. But I'm getting off track. Let's hop back over to DC here, and DC kind of has that same problem. The point I was trying to make is it's too much going on, because with Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson's Batman, and Batman Part 2 is currently filming, supposed to come out next year. Fingers crossed, can't wait for that. You have that going on, but you have a different Batman that's about to be introduced in the proper DC universe. Now you're confusing audiences. Now you have two Batmen running around, and that's silly. That makes about as much sense as you have a David Cornsweet Superman, and then you're gonna bring in Henry Cavill to do a one-off Superman movie. That's gonna confuse people. It's bad enough you're already confused because we're not too far removed from seeing Henry Cavill as Superman. It was just a couple of years ago when he was Superman in Black Adam, and now you have David Cornsweet as Superman. It's too close together. Now, is that James Gunn and Peter Safran's fault? No, it's not their fault. I don't blame them for this because they have their own vision. They have their own plan laid out, and that didn't fit into it. But yet and still, you can't just throw away Matt Reeves' Batman universe because it is highly successful and well received. And so you got to let him finish his story. And it's just a lot going on. It's a lot going on within that little realm. But the issue with DC I see right now, the problem we have is James Gunn. James Gunn is the problem. Now, this isn't a bash James Gunn show. I'm not bashing him. I'm a huge fan of James Gunn. I'm going all the way back to Slither. I'm going back to him writing the Dawn of the Dead remake that was directed by Zack Snyder. Coincidentally enough, I love James Gunn. I love his work. Guardians of the Galaxy, all three of them. I love Suicide Squad. I thought that Superman was a decent Superman movie. I didn't have a problem with it like everybody else. I don't have a problem with James Gunn in his directing. I don't have a problem with it. The problem I have is you can't be a writer, director, and a CEO of a studio at the same time. It conflicts visions. Now, he had this big press conference when he was first announced as the CEO, and he laid out this 10-year plan that he had. He announced buku movies and TV shows that were going to supposedly come to fruition. Now, so far, I think 4 out of 10 has really went into production or been released. But besides that, I knew early on all that wasn't going to happen. There was no way all that was going to happen. But in that press conference or that video he released, he stated that, they're going to respect not authors, but the writer's vision and the directors that they bring in vision. Now, at that time when he made that, he wasn't signed on to be the director of Superman. Now, he did say he was writing it, but everybody pretty much guessed correctly and said that he was going to direct it as well, which he did. He did end up directing it, just like he's about to direct, or not about to, they're currently making Man of Tomorrow as well. You got too much going on. And once again, to switch back over to Marvel, some of the issues that people point out about Marvel is that Kevin Feige, who's the head honcho there, he has his hands into everything right now, and it's too many eyes on the fire. It's too wait, how's the saying go? He's stretched too thin. He's stretched too thin, because you got the movies coming out, you have the Disney Plus series coming out. It's all this stuff going on, and he's stretched too thin, and he can't focus on one thing like he used to. He used to focus on just the films, and it was pretty, I'm not going to say simple, because making movies is far from simple, but you can focus on one thing at a time. But when you're filming Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and you also got She-Hulk and what else came out around that time? You had a few things. You had Echo and all this other stuff, all that going on at the same time. It was too much going on. And so You can tell that the quality dipped. It dipped, and it's been dipping ever since. Nothing has that same magic as the first three phases. Ever since Endgame, it was truly the Endgame. It hasn't been clicking. Maybe three or four films that have been like okay, that felt like Marvel. All the Spider-Man films with Tom Holland were great. Shang-Chi was great. I like Thunderbolts. That was pretty good. Outside of that, it hasn't been. It has not been a fun ride for Marvel, but he has stretched himself too thin. And I think the same thing is happening to James Gunn. He is stretching himself too thin. He wrote all the episodes to Creature Commandos. Really good show. That animated series. Really good show. That was the first thing out the gate for them, for DC Studios. I thought it was great, except for that final episode, which was, I don't know what happened because it was excellent up to that point. But he went on and made Superman, wrote, directed Superman, and then he went into Peacemaker season 2, which he shoehorned into this universe because that was a product of the DCEU, but he found a way to twist and turn it and put it into this universe, this new rebooted universe, which was fine. It it wasn't a clean transition, but it was all right. He did that. He wrote episodes of that. He even directed a few episodes of that. Now he's writing and directing Man of Tomorrow as well. Now, depending on who you listen to, he also dipped his toe into the Supergirl movie. He picked some of those needle drops throughout that film, which you could tell that it just felt at moments like it was trying to copy a James Gunn movie. Now, I don't know if that was Craig Gillespie trying to emulate James Gunn, or James Gunn had a hand in it. I don't know. We probably never know. But at this point, it really doesn't matter. The movie is set to lose the studio close to $100 million. That's that's not a good start for this studio. You're 2 movies in, and you're already losing $100 million. That's not good. Now, upcoming, along with Man of Tomorrow, which comes out next year, before that, you got Clayface. Now, Clayface looks really good. Clayface looks like a full-on horror film, low budget little horror film that's based in a superhero world in Gotham. So you got my attention there, and I think it's gonna be successful. I think it's gonna be good. It looks really good. Looks good from that teaser trailer that we got. Now, could I go there and be disappointed? Absolutely, but I am looking forward to it still. You have Lanterns that comes out, I think, in August, if I'm not mistaken, on HBO Max. Now, Lanterns, a little mixed. It's, a little mixed. I don't know what direction they're going there. Is this True Detective? Is this based off a Green Lantern run that I didn't read? I don't know. But I like Kyle Chandler. I like Aaron Pierre. I thought that was great casting as Jon Stewart. I'm excited for it, but I'm not like, oh my God, I can't wait. I'm not pulling my hair out if I had any, in anticipation for Lanterns. But it does look interesting. Looks like it's a different direction, that a different take, a different look. We'll see. A different tone. That's what I was trying to find. The word I was trying to find. A different tone from anything else that we've seen from the DC universe. So that's interesting. And that's one of the things I like about the DC Studios new little reboot thing, that so far everything feels different, even though we're in the same universe. Superman looks happy and bubbly. It's Superman. It's all colorful and gorgeous looking. And then you go to Peacemaker that just looks realistic, in as far as the look. I'm not talking about the tone of it. But you go to Supergirl. Supergirl is pretty dark. Not as dark as I felt it should have went based on the source material, but it's a dark story. Um, in Lanterns, looks like it's going to be kind of dark, kind of a rated R feel to it, a true detective feel to it. And Clayface is a rated R horror film. So these are all different kind of tones and genres that is a part of this bigger universe. And I appreciate that. And that's one of my knocks with Marvel. And I hate to keep bringing them back into the fold, but that's the only comparisons I could use when we talk about DC and Marvel. But Marvel has pretty much the same tone throughout. Every now and then they'll kind of deviate a little bit. Like when you get to Captain America Winter Soldier, it goes a little darker with the spy thriller element of it all. Black Panther had a different feel to it, of course. Outside of that, everything else just feels comic booky. And that's fine for that brand, but for DC is different, especially if you're a fan of the comics. It's different. You pick up a Flash comic and then read a Batman comic, it is a vastly different tone. A Superman comic versus a Wonder Woman comic they're vastly different in tone. And that's how the film should feel as well. And so for that, good on DC, but I don't think that the audiences are ready for it. With that being said, it is DC Studios in trouble. It's too early to tell. It's too early to sit back and say they're in trouble, that James Gunn is going to get fired. They're only 2 movies in. It is very early yet. But I will say this. If Man of Tomorrow comes out next year and it crash and burn like Supergirl, or God forbid is not more successful than Superman, then he's in trouble. Then they're in trouble at that point because the studio isn't flipping a profit at that point. You're basically breaking even. I think Superman broke even, maybe made a little bit of a profit, but not by much. Of course, I just told you Supergirl didn't lost whatever profit they made from Superman is gone because of Supergirl. And we'll see with Clayface. I think Clayface will make a profit because it's a low budget. It's like I think they spent 30-40 million to make that movie, and so it's gonna make a profit. Now, Man of Tomorrow, man, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's all I can say. It's too early to tell. We haven't seen anything. I've seen some set photos and a little set video. Somebody snuck and recorded Superman beating up Lex Luthor in that kryptonite suit or that power suit that Lex Luthor is wearing. And so, other than that, I don't know what to expect from Man of Tomorrow. Brainiac is the villain. I mean, that's new. We're finally going to get to see Brainiac in live action. That's interesting. It's all going to come down to that first trailer. We'll see when that first trailer for Man of Tomorrow comes out, whenever it does, probably around Christmas or the first of next year sometime, whenever we see it. But the reactions of that, we'll know after the reactions of that. That will check the temperature. If nobody's excited by that trailer, they're in trouble. You know that the movie is not going to do good. But if some way they can conjure up some level of excitement for that movie between now and its release, they got a chance. But as it stands right now, the way it is, no, it doesn't look good. And the fact that they deviated from their initial plan, going back to that video that James Gunn released when he was first brought on, he had this 10-year plan. He really, not released, but named some of the movies. The Authority, that Authority film looks like that's not going to happen. The Waller series about Amanda Waller doesn't look like that's going to happen. Of course, Batman Brave and the Bold, that's to be determined. We don't know what's happening with that. The Paradise Lost series that was set in Themyscira, Wonder Woman's homeworld, but not with Wonder Woman in it. But that is kind of, we haven't heard anything about that. The Booster Gold HBO Max series, haven't heard nothing about that. The Swamp Thing movie, haven't heard nothing about that. You announce these projects and nothing has happened, but all we've been focused on is basically the super family. It's not the DC universe. It's more of the Superman universe at this point. We've gotten 2 Superman movies or super family movies. I'm sorry, with Superman and Supergirl. And then the next movie we get is Man of Tomorrow with Superman. It's all Superman. There's no Wonder Woman. Now, allegedly, at the time of this recording, it hasn't been confirmed, but there's no Wonder Woman. Well, there's supposed to be Wonder Woman in Man of Tomorrow. To be honest with you, the more I hear, the rumors that I hear about that movie, it sounds like Baby Justice League rather than Man of Tomorrow, because Jon Stewart is in it, Green Lantern from the Lantern series. He's in it. Supergirl's in it. Superman's in it. Lex Luthor's in it. Wonder Woman is allegedly in it, even though some are saying it's Maxima, not Wonder Woman. Okay. Mr. Terrific is returning, and he needed to, because he was the best thing to come out of Superman. Guy Gardner is coming back in it. Hawk Girl is coming back in it. It's Baby Justice League. Just no Batman. No Batman. Another thing, going back to the Maxima thing. And now a lot of people don't even know who that is. And I can understand. And I'm a DC nut, and I barely know who she is. I know of her. She's similar to Wonder Woman, but she's not Wonder Woman, But why focus on these? And see, James Gunn got this thing about focusing on these BC level characters, Just look at the Suicide Squad movie. Just look at Guardians of the Galaxy. All these, he has a fascination with these lower tier characters, Creature Commandos and things like that. That's his niche. He loves them. And I don't have a problem with that, because they all need their moments to shine. I get all that. But putting them in the starring role, making a big deal of them is not very smart business, because not too many people know about it. For instance, Supergirl. Not too many people really know about Supergirl like that. And you gave us a Supergirl movie where there's no backstory. Well, I say that there's backstory in it. I don't want to spoil Supergirl, because it just came out. But there's backstory, but it's not an origin story. And a lot of people not digging that, Now, granted, there's a lot of misogyny involved in that. There's a lot of men who don't want to see a woman be a superhero or be the most powerful being type thing. Those insecure men, and that caused for a lot of the backlash against this movie too. If you read some of the reviews, I'm not just making that up. But I'd say all that to say, if you're gonna kick off a new universe, you needed to start with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. That's your trinity. That's That's the holy trinity of the DC universe. If you don't start off with that, you're in trouble because you're asking the true blue hardcore comic book lovers to come out and support this movie or movies. And honestly, it's not too many of us. It's not too many of those who love the lower tier characters. The majority of people are main characters. You know, they into the Batmans, the Spider-Mans, the X-Men, the Supermans, the Wonder Woman. You know, who knows who Maxima is? I'm pretty sure I lost a lot of you when I mentioned that name. Like, who is that? And you probably got to look her up. And I get it. I had to when they first announced it. You know, it is all speculation and rumor, but the majority of people saying that's a diversion. The actress was actually cast as Wonder Woman. They just don't want to announce it. But that's besides the point. I had to be reminded of who Maxima was. And I'm like, why introduce her in this movie? You know, if that's true, that makes no sense. At this point, you're just entertaining yourself, James Gunn. You're not entertaining everybody else. Everybody don't want to see that, you know. They want to see the main characters, you know. We want to see this story eventually lead up to a Justice League movie. And the way it's looking now, I'll probably be in my 80s before we ever see a Justice League movie with this cast, with this story that's being told. But that's besides the point. Anywho's, but my last point I wanted to share before I get up out of here about DC is DC. DC problem, as far as James Gunn is concerned, I don't think a lot of directors or writers will want to come on board and do something in this universe because the vision is already laid out. You give it up, say it's already James Gunn's vision. It's not yours. See, I can't come in there if I was a director. I couldn't come in there and say, man, I want to make a Batman film. But what I want to do, I want to base it on Batman Hush, or I want to base it on Batman The Long Halloween. Well, that doesn't fit. James Gunn is going to be like, well, that doesn't fit into the vision, you know, because we got the Brave and the Bold, and Damian is his Robin, and we're moving forward with that. And that'll be going back, and we'll have to explain why this and that. So it doesn't fit. That's not my vision, and it isn't his. So we wouldn't work. So you got to bring in a director that basically is there in namesake only, because James Gunn is going to tell you how this is how it's going to go. This is how it's laid out. I already got the writers. I already got the script. You all you got to do is go in and shoot it. You know, well, this isn't what I wanted to shoot. You know what I'm saying? So it's all James Gunn. It's just him, you know, and that's the problem. That's the issue. And unfortunately, if that's the route they're going to go with it, it's not going to be successful, you know. Now, well, let me take that back. I'm not going to say it's not going to be successful, but you're not going to get other voices in the room, and you need other voices in the room. Kevin Feige, he is not a director. He isn't a writer. He's a producer. And so he brings in a writer-director such as Ryan Coogler. He'll bring in a writer-director such as Josh Whedon. He'll bring in a writer-director team as the Russo brothers and all them, and dare push their vision forward with these characters. And they'll just come together in one cohesive movie, mashed up, and do their thing with the Avengers film. Whereas with this, it's just James Gunn telling his story. And I think that's what Supergirl suffered from this past weekend. Yeah, Craig Gillespie, he directed the film, but this didn't feel like a Craig Gillespie film. Of course, he never did a film like this before, this big before. You know, he made I, Tonya. He made Cruella. He made what was the other one I liked? Lars and the Real Girl. Nothing on the level of a Supergirl, you know? And so he never made a movie like this before. So I would assume he had to lean a lot on James Gunn and ask his opinion. But James Gunn at that time, he's developing this Man of Tomorrow film. So he got that going on. He's helping him out, which goes back to my initial point. He's stretched too thin. But it was more of a James Gunn type feel. It just felt like Craig Gillespie was trying to emulate James Gunn. It didn't feel like a James Gunn movie because technically it wasn't, but at the same time, it felt like James Gunn had his hand in a lot of the making of that movie, even though he didn't write it, but it still felt like elements of it was James Gunn. And that's going to be an issue with this universe moving forward. I look, I'm hesitant to say that this studio is in trouble, that the DCU is in trouble. I don't want to believe that because all that would tell me is that James Gunn, Peter Safran would probably be let go, especially with this new acquisition with Paramount buying Warner Brothers along with DC. And so there's a possibility that they could be shown the door. There's a possibility that we have to start all over again. And that's the part that's killing me. Why we got to do this again with DC? Why can't we get this right? It is infuriating, man. The mere thought of that we got to go through this again, recasting Superman, recasting Batman. Well, we ain't even cast Batman yet, but going through all that, reestablishing a universe, all this other, it's just, oh my God, do I really want to go through this again with my favorite out of all of them, man. I love DC. I love comic books as a whole. I love Marvel, but DC is my bag. Those are some of the first comics I read before I really got deep into comics, spreading my wings and going over to Marvel and other publications. But DC is where it started with me, and I fell in love with those characters, and I'm still in love with them today. And I think if they're done right on screen, it would be phenomenal. It would blow everything out the water as far as comic book movies are concerned. But I think as far as DC is concerned, they squandered their opportunity. I said this years ago. Me and my friends were talking, and this is when cinematic universe start really kicking into high gear with Marvel and whatnot. And I was like, man, this is the time DC needs to step it up, because unlike Marvel, which before they acquired all of their properties back, they still don't have Spider-Man. Technically, they're sharing Spider-Man with Sony, but aside from that, they own everybody else. And I think the Hulk too. I think they're borrowing the Hulk, but that's it doesn't matter. They didn't have all they didn't have their main ones. They didn't have them. They didn't have X-Men. They didn't have Fantastic Four. They didn't have Spider-Man. They didn't have access to all that. They didn't have it. And DC had all theirs. DC was never in a position that Marvel was. And DC played around for decades and couldn't get it right. And now we're at a point in time where it looks like it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Marvel is going to leave him in the dust, because as much as Marvel is struggling, I think once we get past Doomsday, which I know this is going to be a hot take, but I don't think Doomsday is going to do that good. I'm sorry to tell everybody. It just doesn't feel like Doomsday, even though I haven't seen not one iota other than those little snippets that they released earlier this year. I I don't know any. I don't think it's gonna hit because, well, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, but once X-Men get into the picture, once they start rolling X-Men going into that mutant saga, they're gonna pick it back up. I think Marvel is going to be back firing on all cylinders, and DC is really, really going to have their crap together. I hope they do by then. But those are my thoughts. I'm not. It's too early to say that DC is in trouble. I don't think they're in trouble, but they need to wake up. I'll say that much. They need to get their crap together, or especially with Man of Tomorrow. If Man of Tomorrow doesn't deliver, then we can revisit this conversation, and I will have a completely different answer. But I want to know, what do you think about DC? What did you think of Supergirl? Do you think that is over? Or did you think it was over after Superman? Because I know a lot of people just checked out after Superman. They were like, this isn't the Superman I wanted to see. And I can respect that. You know, a lot of people fell in love with Henry Cavill as Superman, and this was a vastly different Superman than Henry Cavill. And I get that too. And so I want to know your thoughts, man. Do you think that Clayface will revive this universe? Do you think that Lanterns will restore hope? Do you think Man of Tomorrow will get us back on track? Contact the show through our website, the kbradionetwork.com. You can subscribe to the website as well. You can also subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe and like this video as well. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this little chat about the troubles over there at DC Studios. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.